that is he going to make that sound every episode? I don't even know.
Change your voice.
Change. What does that mean?
You sound the same to me all the time. I mean, sometimes you yell, sometimes you don't. That's what voices are.
Really, the two sounds I make.
Welcome to how voices sound.
Welcome to the Foreign Report, your weekly foreign policy show that gives you all the gory details of geopolitics with hopefully some laughs along the way.
All right, now do it in your other voice.
Welcome to the Foreign Report! Your weekly foreign policy show that gives you the gory details of geopolitics.
That's right.
Some laughs along the way.
And some sick riffs. Manosphere.
Slacks.
Oh, wow, look at you.
Is it getting bigger?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I can tell.
I'm lifting. I'm going to LA Fitness. If you're in the LA area, you want to lift with me sometime, don't DM me.
Don't. He will give them your phone number. I had to block LA Fitness's phone number because of you. They call me every week.
You get a free pass.
I don't want a free pass.
You can have one.
I have my home workout. Maybe I'll come as like a guest.
Yeah.
And then they can.
And then they'll show up at your house.
Yeah, right. And then they just
Travis,
follow me around.
Get swole? You want to get swole,
He just
Travis?
pops up when I'm in the bathroom like, you ready to get swole? LA Fitness.
Snap it to the gym. Is that right? No, it's
don't know
different.
what
It's
they're-
a Slim Jim thing. Anyways, folks, it's great. I'm Seena. This is Travis. You guys know.
You already know.
FPZ, T-Seps. We're so happy to be here. We try to make global news bearable. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome.
Yeah. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
I did. I don't really remember it.
Right. Those are the
because
best ones.
I have kids, and it was like a blur.
Yep.
But I had a really enjoyable time. It was like a family friend house we went to.
Right. Yeah, Friendsgiving.
Yeah, Friendsgiving.
Those are fun.
But listen, we got a big show today. Lots been happening. We're going into the new year. A couple things I want to plug first, Travis.
Okay. Hit us.
Are you ready?
Hit us with it.
We are recording this today. It's Wednesday.
I would hope we're recording it today.
And it's going to go out on Friday. Next week, we're going to record the show on another Wednesday, so the Wednesday the 10th. And it's going to go live on the 12th. But you know what else we're doing on December 12th?
I'm already confused, but go ahead. You're telling the listeners multiple days. Also, there's a Monday. And sometimes we send emails on Mondays. And there's a Thursday, and that's usually our day where we don't think about things.
Yeah, exactly.
Sunday, we watch football.
Do you watch football?
This is how I unwind now, which sounds crazy. Some people use sports to ignore politics, but because we cover politics so much, I need sports to take a break from politics.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said on the Thanksgiving show.
You need
it. This is how I relate to other people.
We're going live.
Woo!
December 12th, the Foreign Report is going to go live.
Where are we going live, Seena?
YouTube.
Great. The YouTube channel.
The YouTube channel. You can find us there. We're going to go live. Maybe we'll simulcast to some other platforms. I have no idea yet. I just figured out how to do a background and do some switching. So it's going to be very fun. We're going to go over the breaking news from the week.
Great.
And do a little wind down.
A little wind down for the year.
You're going to be in Ohio, so you'll be remote, right?
Yeah, but I'll drink with you anyway.
Yeah, that's nice.
Virtually, why
It'll
not?
be the 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so it'll be
For
great.
you, yeah.
I will get...
For me, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, specifically Ohio.
Yeah, exactly. I'll slam some wine and then go pick up my kids. That'll be really good. That'll be really good.
It wouldn't be the first time. Come on, folks.
God. Come on. Don't call CS at CS. I don't know. Child CPS?
Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom. Listen, folks. Also, send us some questions. theforeignreportlpn@gmail.com. We're going to do a mailbag episode either this year or in January. I'm really excited about that. Some of you have already sent questions in. We got them. Thank you.
Great.
Can't wait to answer those. And, of course, as always, foreignreportshow.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Sign up for, these things that we're doing with Seena's Corner or Travis Corner. Mm-hmm. Danielle does a great job of talking about the stories from last week. So
Yeah. And I want to give a shout out. I was in Ohio for Thanksgiving weekend, and the last Podcast Boys had shows in Akron. And then Ed and Henry did a Side Stories live show in Columbus where I opened for them. I want to thank everyone for all the nice comments about Foreign Report.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, a lot of people loving it. So thank you.
Did you say I don't listen to the comments? Did you say I can't?
I said I said, thank you for telling me your comment, because Seena doesn't read the comments if you did leave that comment, but I will tell him, and then he will either choose to ignore or react.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thanks to everyone for coming to the shows and also the nice feedback.
That's fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. Well, Travis, now that we've said all these nice, wonderful things, I'd like to talk about something even more nice.
Uh-oh.
Nazis.
You said you talk about current events.
Well, this is what's so crazy about this moment is I thought we weren't going to talk about Nazis.
Yeah.
I thought surely, given how, breaking and prescient the news of the day is,
right,
we're going to be focused on the machinations of what's been happening. And what I'm talking about, of course, is Pete Hegseth and the September double tap strike that happened. And is it a war crime? That's the big question.
Is it?
But I learned something recently about war crimes.
Okay, it sounds like it's going to go way back.
It's going to go way back, and there's actually a really famous war crime that we should talk about first, and that's very applicable to today. So are you ready, Travis, for a little trip down Nazi lane?
Can we call it history lane?
History lane?
With a little touch of Nazi?
With a little kiss of Nazi?
I don't know if I should have...
A little Nazi smooch?
I mean, there's some people out there building homes on Nazi lane, and they're to be avoided. But go ahead, let's take a trip.
This is called the Pellias Affair. And so for the history buffs out there, you may know it. But in 1944, in March, World War II, there's a German U-boat, and Captain Heinz Eck, E-C-E-C.
Great German name, classic German name. It just sounds like a noise. Heinz Eck! It's like he sat on one of those spiky German helmets from World War I.
27 years old. He's like a baby. But that's like a 45-year-old man in 1944.
Yeah.
So
especially at that point, you've already been in the war like 9 years.
Exactly. So he's a German U-boat captain, okay? Imagine. U-boat, underwater, it's a sub, right?
Submarine, yeah.
Spots a Greek steamship called the Pellias. Now, they didn't know what this was. You can imagine it's the height of war. They're unsure what it is, but they know it's not a battleship. They know it's a cargo ship of some kind, right? There's a lot of these ships that were going around, and this particular type of ship was basically getting chartered to do different things for any one of the Allied powers, right? Sometimes it was war-related, sometimes it was trade-related. So Heinz Eck, he fires 2 torpedoes, and the ship sinks in 3 minutes.
Yeah, those are powerful torpedoes.
So then you got 12 Greeks bobbing in the water, and Eck brings one aboard.
So he goes over in the U-boat and saves one, leaves the others in the water?
Yeah, because he wants to interrogate them.
Gotcha.
And so he says, hey, don't sweat it.
Okay.
Because the guy told him, hey, we're actually doing a cargo run. We're on our way to the British Ministry of War. The cargo was empty. There was nothing in the ship. And the Captain X said, okay, since you are, not in the field of battle anymore, we're going to send you back to your people, and we're going to call rescue to come and get you.
That's what he tells them, huh?
But then a little bit later, he changes his mind.
Oh, no.
And he was worried, Travis, that those survivors would call for help. Now, who would have thought survivors in the ocean calling for help?
Yeah.
That's not something you hear every day, right? Of course. So a little bit later, he says, okay, he tells 4 crew members, hey, go get the machine guns.
Oh, no.
From underneath.
Yeah.
And they spend the next 5 hours.
What?
Machine gun firing these 12 survivors and throwing grenades at them.
Oh, no. 5 hours? It shouldn't take that long.
How bad of a shot are you?
Your grenades just keep getting wet.
Can you
like,
imagine?
Nine.
Please stop. Okay.
Brutal.
It's so 9 were killed. 3 survived.
So 3 of them still survive all the machine gunning and grenading for 5 hours.
They survived.
Sheesh.
And so Eck, even afterwards, after this 5-hour, very inefficiently done execution, says, I know you guys all feel bad, but he says, quote, think of our wives and children who die in air attacks.
He says that to his own men.
Yeah, because they're like, hey, boss, what are we doing here?
Hey, what are we doing?
What are we doing? Why are we gonna kill these
I'm a
guys?
Nazi with a New York accent. I already hate myself.
Yeah. So, and a little bit later in 44, I think it was in May of 44, they get busted by the Royal Navy off the coast of Somalia. And in the U-boat, in the sub, if there's one thing the Nazis did very well, among other horrific things, is they kept good records.
They sure did. Those Germans, boy, they love writing everything down.
They wrote everything down about this execution that they did.
Oof.
And they were captured by the Brits. And in October of 1945, this was the first World War II war crime trial before Nuremberg.
Oh, wow.
And so they were charged for, of course, not sinking the ship. That's what they were charged for killing the survivors.
Right. That's how bad of a war crime it blatantly was.
Yes.
Was that even before Nuremberg, there's like, well, this thing here.
Let's get this easy
and
one.
here are all the records also. Yeah.
Here are all the records. This one's a no-brainer. They killed innocent people who had posed no threat to them.
Right.
His defense was, hey, it was an operational necessity. They thought there were comms on the wreckage that they could use to then give the position away of this U-boat and bring it back.
Gotcha.
The prosecution called a decorated Nazi captain.
I don't know how decorated that sentence right there. That decorated Nazi captain. All right.
So they called it Nazi captain. I think it was actually the defense called it as like a character witness. But in Cross, by the way, this Nazi captain was not just any Nazi. He sank 20 Allied ships. So he was legit.
So by decorated, you mean he did a lot of good things for the Nazis that were actually very bad for everyone else.
Which, again, I think I want to make this clear. And I think we got a question about this, like how do you determine what you're reading is true? Mm-hmm. And the thing I always like to look for is what is the person that I have nothing in common with saying?
Right.
What is the person that thinks completely opposite of me in every single possible way thinking and saying?
And in like you have a law degree, so that's like a good person to. It's like I don't agree with this person at all, but we agree on this one thing.
We got this one thing.
Gotcha. Q decorated Nazi captain,
and he says I would not have done it.
And this man's a killer. Decorated.
The trial is like the easiest trial to convict. Eck and two of the other officers are executed by firing squad.
Whoa! But by the same guys who tried to kill all the Greek survivors.
Exactly.
So it took 5 hours.
It took 5 hours.
Sure.
So we have this idea established in law. Now, the other thing, too, by the way, that I found out about the Nazis is that, and this Nazi captain spoke to this in his testimony, is that the Nazi Navy prided themselves, again, just bear with me, folks. They prided themselves on professionalism.
Sure.
And one of the elements of that...
5 hours to execute 9 people. Take records. Take notes.
Take notes, sure.
Document every bullet.
This same Nazi captain that they had on the stand was like, listen, the standard practice across any U-boat was if you sink the ship, you rescue the survivors.
Fair.
That is standard. He said any U-boat captain in the Nazi Navy would have done that. And he basically said this captain, Captain Eck, lost his nerve. It broke him because the trauma of war and all this stuff. It's imagine like this Nazi captain trying to like get the war crimes tribunal to be like, can you just empathize with the guy?
Yeah.
It's war.
I was
it's
thinking
tough.
of our wives and children.
Yeah.
I'm saving wives and children over here.
It's not easy.
Sure.
So even the Nazi captains that are his, peers were like, yeah, this guy fucked up.
Okay. Sure.
All right. Now.
So this establishes precedent.
Oh, yeah.
Wartime precedent.
Oh, big time. Let's cut to September 2nd, 2025.
Wow, this is quite a few years later.
More than 80 years.
80 years later. And this has been precedent.
Precedent. Back to school vibes.
Sure.
Except if you're a drug boat filled to the gills with cocaine.
Allegedly. Headed to Donald Trump Jr.'s house.
Oh,
as we've established on previous shows.
Travis. That boat was filled with fentanyl from China on its way to Mexico to kill young girls in Arizona.
Allegedly. Sure.
Allegedly.
Go on.
Pete Hegseth apparently said orally, verbally,
Yeah,
I should say verbally.
Sounds better.
Verbally.
I don't want to think anything Hegseth orally.
Yeah. I mean, some of you do.
No.
No? No?
No.
No?
Nope.
Okay.
Remember when he threw that axe on Fox News Saturday morning and hit a guy? That's what I want to think about.
Yeah.
That's my Secretary of War.
Yeah. He said kill them all. You know, these
About-
strikes
about the drug boats.
These drug boats, we've talked about the drug boats being bombed and
right.
strikes.
And even these orders are unconstitutional because there's no due process for anyone involved.
Exactly. That's another really great contextual point to make as well. Let's just assume that we're at war. Let's assume that there is a legitimate reason to be shooting at narco terrorists, even if they are just fishermen.
And the Trump administration and Hegseth, they are justifying these strikes as narco terrorism.
Yeah. Let's say that this is war on terror. Even though all of this is unconstitutional, even the first strike is, I would say, a war crime. But he said to this guy, Admiral Mitch Bradley, hey, kill them all. No quarter. No survivors.
Ooh.
SEAL Team 6 is on the ground or in the water giving intel and targeting information. And their first strike hits this boat. And let's just, again, assume it's filled with fentanyl on its way to murder and poison our youth.
Sure.
Okay. Survivors are in the water. Admiral Mitch Bradley orders a second strike based on intel from SEAL Team 6. The second strike happens and they kill the guys there.
The survivors.
The survivors.
Hanging on to the wreckage of the boat.
Bradley's justification immediately after was, hey, we did the double tap because survivors could, quote, theoretically call other traffickers to come and pick them up and their cargo. Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
Then the Pentagon changes their story and says it was just about sinking the boat, not killing the survivors.
Uh-oh. And this is an example of sometimes the cover-up is worse than the crime.
And then after that even, they started changing internal procedures to prioritize rescuing the survivors of these strikes to the point where they even just started processing them once they picked them up. And one guy was processed without even being charged. You know why? Because he was probably just a fisherman.
Oh, no.
So let's bring this all together, Travis.
Yeah, please.
The Second Geneva Convention is explicitly clear, and that's maintained for 80 years.
Right. Precedent.
That if someone is hors de combat, which is French for out of combat, then they are not to be killed.
Right.
Then you have to treat them differently. That's established. Why is this different? Why do we say that this is a problem and not like the Obama drone strikes? I've seen a lot of comments and a lot of people talking about that.
Right. And I would argue this is all post 9/11 Dick Cheney style war and terrorism. The entire earth is a battlefield. So all of it's not good.
All of it is bad.
But this right here, again, the cover-up sometimes is worse than the crime. This reminds me of reading the headlines during the Bush-Cheney years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and this is people just freelancing when you feel like you have your finger on the button, power corrupts.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening now. So at land, why is this different than a drone strike in Afghanistan or Iraq? Because we would bomb, a wedding or something awful, right? And we would do a double tap, or we'd bomb a caravan of Jeeps.
Obama specifically killed an American citizen.
He killed an American citizen.
Who's allegedly a terrorist.
But, the difference here is a couple things. One, at least with Obama, there was somewhat of a transparent, like, hey, we're telling you who we killed, which was still problematic. And even then, by the way, if you go look back at the reporting, the New York Times and some of these other newspapers listened to the government like way too easily, and they reported the same person being killed multiple times. And so there's a lot of problems there in and of itself. But here, again, the Trump administration is just killing people. But the difference is land and at sea. Now, in the military, there's a war manual for the Pentagon, right?
Right. There are rules, Peacock.
And the war manual is based on federal law, international law, and the Geneva Conventions. You know why? To make sure our soldiers and our military don't commit war crimes.
That's good.
And in it,
war crimes seem bad.
It specifically talks about if someone's on land and you do a drone strike or you do a strike, if they're injured and they're moving away from the battle, they're still in the battlefield. They're still a combatant.
Oh, so
because they're on land.
Yeah.
Because they could still have a gun, they could still have something, they could still fight, right? But if you're at sea and you sink their battleship, they're not in the battlefield anymore. There is no battlefield for them.
Right, because water's different.
They are out of combat.
Yeah.
Unless they're a shark and they're swimming and you're like, I better not go in. That's a shark.
Right.
They're defenseless. So killing them is about as transparent of a war crime as you can get.
Yep.
So, Travis, there's one other part to this.
Please.
And it's the cover-up that you were talking about.
Yes.
And our good old buddy Pete Hegseth loves to stand up for war fighters.
He sure does.
Except when it potentially means that he's going to be brought up on war crimes.
Okay.
Here's Pete Hegseth talking at the cabinet meeting where Trump was falling asleep, by the way. If you haven't seen it, go look it up.
Oh, that's right. I saw the visuals.
Wow.
Important meeting, sir.
Those are some heavy eyelids. You can't, I don't think you can bench those eyelids. They were so heavy. Those were so.
I don't even want to try.
You don't want to get in there. All right. Here's Pete Hegseth talking about this strike.
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand because the thing was on fire. It exploded in fire or smoke.
Trump
You
is
can't
asleep
see
next
this.
to him.
This is called the fog of war.
The White House says it
Whoa.
was U.S. Navy Admiral Frank Bradley who gave the order, which it insists was legal. But lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are questioning whether a war crime was committed.
I think there's a broad consensus that it's illegal to
This is Rand Paul.
kill people who are clinging to wreckage.
Instead of accepting responsibility for what happened.
He goes on to say, and I thought it was in this clip, but it's not. But he goes on to say that Admiral Bradley is a war hero. He was well within his rights. Admiral Bradley did this with the express view that he was doing right by America. He said all this stuff.
Right.
Kept naming Admiral Bradley and kept saying how much of a hero he was.
Admiral Bradley.
And then he also kept saying, I wasn't there. I was
didn't
busy.
see anything.
I didn't see
He
it.
also used the reference to fog of war, which is a term. It's actually like not a good term to use.
Yeah.
It's about in the fog of war, terrible things happen and no one can control them, which is, I mean, again.
That's how war crimes happen.
Yeah. So he's literally acknowledging his excuse is the thing that people usually use to explain war crimes.
One, we're not at war.
Right.
Two, there was no fog because you have satellites and you have people on the ground.
Yeah.
Or in the water.
Right. There's no fog anymore.
There's no fog.
The technology is post fog. Sir.
The word fog of war came when there was actual fog.
Actual fog and gas and
things you couldn't see.
Also fantastic documentary. Robert
great.
McNamara.
Yes.
One of my favorite documentaries.
One of my faves as well. Love the Interrotron style.
Yes.
So, guys, this is incredible. This is Pete Hegseth blatantly trying to serve up Admiral Bradley as a war criminal and not himself.
Ooh, man, that's what you want from a leader. Immediately selling out.
Okay, so then here's a clip of Pete Hegseth from back in the day where he's talking about war crimes.
Oh.
Okay? Let's
I'm sure he's against them and whatnot.
This is 2016 where he's talking about war crimes. A very reasonable Pete Hegseth.
There are some guys at Leavenworth who made really bad choices on the battlefield. And I do think there have to be consequences for abject war crimes. If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief. There's a standard, there's an ethos, there's a belief that we are above what so many things that our enemies or others would do.
Oh wow, man, this guy's really principled. He should become like Secretary of War or something.
I think he should. Wow, what a reasonable guy.
That guy was very reasonable.
And now it all makes sense a little bit more why Senator Mark Kelly and those other senators came out and made that video telling troops that they don't have to follow.
They must have known that this news was about to drop.
I think they knew something, you know? And you also had another admiral that resigned earlier this year that allegedly had something to do with the escalating stuff that's happening.
And
in the
you had that clip of Rand Paul, who's a Republican, but libertarian-leaning Republican out of Kentucky. He's always been against these strikes since they've started.
Yeah, and I think that's where we net out as far as this conflict goes, is that Rand Paul is saying, like, even the first strike is illegal. The second strike is absolutely a war crime.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. My big question is, like, how do these people get justice? Like, who sues them? Who's going to arrest them? How is this even going to happen?
Right.
When we're the world's police force.
Who polices the police? Not Sting, I'll tell you that much.
No.
That band doesn't even exist anymore.
Not KRS-One.
Yeah.
No. So, it's a war crime.
All of it was. First strike, second strike, the order itself.
I can say that with my full chest. This is abundantly clear to me a war crime.
And you're saying it with a full chest, but so did Pete Hegseth once upon a time.
Yeah. And I don't know where we go from here, frankly, other than you just got to go and talk about this with your friends and your family, and you got to go vote about it, because the voting, man, I don't care if it's your local election. I don't care if it's a federal election. All of these votes matter, and they add to the national discussion that we have to have. Because, by the way, Pete Hegseth didn't do this. We did this. We put these people in power. We let this happen. Okay? You could say there's fraud in the election. I don't care. It doesn't matter. We need to make it so that they don't even have the chance to commit fraud to take our votes away. So this is where I'm at on this stuff. It's like, same reason I'm against the death penalty. Like, whenever we kill someone, we do it as a country when it happens at the federal level. We need to, like, internalize that. So that's why this is very upsetting.
Right. It's like we all committed war crimes.
Yes.
Gotcha.
But
Well,
they don't
bad.
want us. Yeah, it's bad.
It's bad then.
Yeah, we're podcasters. They're not going to arrest us.
Well, thank you for explaining that. This is an 80-year precedent that's been broken by a drunk Fox News host. But you're right. It's the culture that he's inherited, basically. And he's arguably making it worse.
He's making it worse. And frankly, we're probably going to go in and attack Venezuela on the ground. And I think this
is what happens when you predict stuff on Wednesday. It happens by Friday.
It is going to happen almost certainly at this point, because you got to just escalate. This is starting to remind me of Reagan invading Grenada after they had an election.
Right. That's an 80s reference.
Yeah. And so I think this is almost a no-brainer that we're going to make up a war and go in there. And by the way, people are going to say it's about the oil. I think it's actually about the precious metals.
Ooh.
We're going to do a licensing deal or whatever, some sort of permitting deal with Venezuela, and have Venezuelan people do the toxic mining of those precious metals and those precious resources to fund all the tech oligarchs that want to bring forth the Antichrist. Okay, Let's go to a commercial break.
Great. And this has been another edition of Seena's predictions that always come true.
Oh, no, I hope I'm wrong. Come on, please, God. All right. Travis, was that fun?
Yeah, from Nazis to current times, we cover it all here at the Foreign Report.
I hope we made a little bit of global news bearable there.
Or at least understandable.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll be right back after this. We're going to talk about Netanyahu's pardon request. There's some stuff coming out of Honduras that we talk about, an update on Nigeria, and then, of course, we're going to have the J.D. Vance Corner. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the Foreign Report. I'm Seena Gazavi, Travis Irvine, T-Seps. I'm FPZ.
Multiple Columbia pieces of clothing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Multiple.
I bring them out for the big shows.
Yeah. If he's not wearing this, he's in a tuxedo, folks.
Nope.
Netanyahu. We haven't talked about the prime minister in a long time. By a long time, I think like 2 weeks.
Yeah, right.
It's
always nice when we don't have to say his name, but
this is bonkers. So let's just back up and give you some context of what's happening.
This is bonkers
with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
This is a perfect example of how domestic policy and foreign policy intertwine in a country like Israel.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is asking for a pardon from the president, and this is how
President of Israel.
Yes.
Woo.
And so, amidst the war and the genocide of Palestinians, Netanyahu has been spending his downtime on trial in Israel for corruption. If you remember, before October 7th, the country was on the brink of just overthrowing his entire government.
Wow.
People were out in the streets.
Oh,
and so these corruption trials, this corruption trial stems from 2019 indictments on charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Basically, he's accused of giving powerful people and money in exchange for very favorable treatment for himself and his family. I've never heard of anything like that before.
Sounds
new.
uniquely American. How dare
yeah.
you steal our thing?
Of course, he denies any wrongdoing, and he uses words like
witch hunt
and
deep state.
and the conspiracy to excuse the charges. His plea for a pardon comes a few weeks after Trump sent a letter to the Israel president Isaac Herzog requesting a pardon for Netanyahu.
Wow, it sounds like a man who's in trouble.
Despite the fact that it's virtually unprecedented for a world leader to request a preemptive pardon, especially without admitting some kind of wrongdoing, Netanyahu's...
I didn't do anything wrong, but if I did... Pardon me.
I'm sorry?
Excuse me. Pardon me. Excuse me.
Not even I'm sorry, but like...
No, this man...
Let me go?
I don't think the words I'm sorry are in this man's lexicon.
So, of course, Netanyahu cites Israel's, quote, security and political reality and his need to help Trump, quote, in further advancing the vital and shared interests of Israel and the U.S. I mean, come on.
What are those shared interests?
What are the shared
Murdering
interests?
everyone?
It's a mess. Obviously, Saudi Arabia's got everything we need now.
Yeah.
That's the weird part about all this.
Mm-hmm. So Qatar,
everyone's giving gifts to the United States. It seems like we're spending on Israel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
After receiving all of the relevant opinions, the president will respond responsibly and sincerely consider this request. That's what the Herzog office responded with.
Right. And it's important to note that Israel's on a parliamentary system, so Netanyahu's prime minister, he's kind of like head of the legislative branch, and then the president, Isaac Herzog, is head of the executive branch.
Yes.
And the judicial branch, I recall, this is why Netanyahu got in trouble even more so on the corruption charges. He tried to like change the whole judicial branch over there.
Yeah.
And like make them powerless so he didn't get in more trouble legally.
And I didn't know this, but every Israel PM since 1996 has been charged with corruption.
Sounds like a good deal. Was this New Orleans?
Yeah, or Chicago? Governor of Illinois?
Right.
Well, I think it's... there's a part of me that's just like, all right, are they just doing this to everybody? But I think it's a mess over there.
Yeah. Gosh, and I mean, and we are, we're on a conspiracy network. We're allowed to dabble. But, there's these clips of Charlie Kirk and General Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
Because you were just saying that Netanyahu is having these problems pre-October 7th.
Yeah.
And there's these rumors, conspiracies, more so on the right wing of things, on the conservative side, that there was a stand-down order on October 7th.
Yes, I saw
and
that.
So, we're a comedy show where we'll let Charlie Kirk say those things and then get murdered. Not us, though.
No.
So it's always interesting when you just kind of put it all together in context. And domestic policy becomes foreign policy. Is Netanyahu. Woohoo! Netanyahu! Is he perpetuating a war to stay out of trouble domestically?
I think so. I mean, what else is there? You got to keep telling people. And you know what? I think there's also a certain part where a guy like Netanyahu convinces himself that he is so important to the security of Israel, even though if you look at the data, he has made Israel wildly less secure and less safe.
Popular.
And he's actually
from a PR standpoint.
He's made Jewish people around the world less safe.
Sure. And even Jewish people are like, please, could you not?
Could you not?
Yeah.
Could you please pump the brakes?
Even his own people, they're protesting in the streets in Israel.
Yeah.
So
it's
no wonder he wants a pardon.
Yeah.
He's in trouble.
He is. What? Also, what's a pardon? I mean, is he going to run again? Like, what? It's a mess. Stop it.
Yeah.
Go away.
It would be nice. There's that meme out there. It's like there's these powerful men who are over 70 who are clearly corrupt and criminals, like Putin, Netanyahu, and Trump. And they're staying in power to not get in trouble.
Yeah.
And making everyone else less safe and the world less fun to be in.
Well, in America, the Supreme Court gave the president the green light to basically do anything he wants and call it a presidential order.
And when the judiciary in Israel wouldn't do that for Netanyahu, he said, I'm throwing all of you out. We're redoing the whole thing.
This is like that Tom Cruise movie. I think it's like Ghost Protocol when he was like going to do that building jump and the safety guy was just like, hey, it's we can't clear that. That's not safe. You know what happened the next day?
What?
They got a new safety guy.
Whoa, new safety guy.
Works on Mission Impossible set. I don't think it's going to work in Israel or in other places.
It reminds me of another Tom Cruise movie. movie. A Few Good Men.
Ah!
I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
There you go.
Listen, folks, let's go to Central America now.
Great. We were just in the Caribbean recently.
Another and more pardon news.
So this is just pardons around the world. Let's call this segment Pardon Me.
Pardon me.
Bam. Pardon me. Corrupt officials need pardons.
By the time you hear this podcast, which will be Friday, a winner in the Honduran election will most likely be named. And as of this recording, however, Honduran officials are calling the race a technical tie, and a manual recount is underway. Tight political races are nothing new, of course, but
especially in Central America.
Yeah, of course, but this one's particularly fraught because Trump has tried many ways to put his sleepy thumb on the scale. Okay, here's what's happening in Honduras. The two more right-wing conservative candidates appear to have split upwards of 80% of the vote. Trump has been backing Nasri Tito Asfura, who has promised a tougher stance on issues of security and more foreign investment. Ding, ding. Trump Hotel, Honduras.
Ding, 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 ding.
In a long truth social.
A new spa for me to kick Jeffrey Epstein out of.
You know, and Honduran has like one of the most beautiful islands in the world off their coast.
Yes, I really want to get to that region for diving and stuff.
And shout out to my brother-in-law, Shin Fujiyama, who is like the number 2 YouTuber in all of South America, lives in Honduras, and he builds schools for young children. He's been doing that for 20 years.
Could we go visit him?
Yeah, we could go visit him.
All right,
it's very cool. Well, maybe we'll do a Foreign Report episode down there.
That's what we got to do. Foreign Report travel shows.
We should just get him to. He doesn't want to like to weigh in on politics because it's like very fraught down there.
And let's go to like places like Honduras and not like Gaza and Nigeria and Sudan.
Let's go to a nice beach in Honduras.
And we'll report from there.
But Trump on Truth Social threatened to cut off aid to Honduras, which, by the way, it's not like Honduras is like making casinos.
Also,
okay,
that's not how it works. You don't go on your social media outlet and make foreign policy. But go ahead.
He said if this Asfura doesn't win, the United States will, quote, not be throwing good money after bad. He also followed through on a promise to pardon former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, a convicted drug trafficker, by a U.S. jury, by the way, who prosecutors said was part of, quote, one of the largest and most violent drug trafficking conspiracies in the world. We are literally blowing up fishermen in the Caribbean to protect us from narco-terrorists, and he just pardoned one of the largest and most violent drug traffickers in the world.
400 tons of cocaine is what you call Donald Trump Jr.'s Saturday night. Come on. Woo!
Let's go!
But that's a double standard. You're bombing fishermen, the little guys, who allegedly are doing the running, if they are, and then this guy's convicted by a jury.
In Fraudsters, we did a whole thing on the war on drugs last season. This is so quintessentially the American policy on war on drugs. If you're a little guy, you're going to go to prison or you're going to get killed. If you're a big guy, if you make the fraud really, really big, like this guy, accepting millions of dollars in bribes, you actually have value to someone. And this
then you
is
can
the
go
value.
get a pardon.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're going to invade Venezuela under the guise of some sort of drug trafficking thing. Pete Hegseth is in a cabinet meeting talking about, we're getting poisoned. You just pardoned one of the people responsible for poisoning people.
Right. And he was convicted by a U.S. jury.
Yeah. So these Trump interventions in foreign places is like added to the list of things where he's just mucking it up.
Yeah. Mucking is one way to put it.
Yeah.
It's a polite way. Keeps us on YouTube.
It does keep us from one less bleep that Adam has to do.
Right.
So that's always good.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's a little crazy. And then also, like, what kind of precedent does this set? If you're pardoning this guy in Honduras, then you're assuredly going to throw Netanyahu a pardon or get the people in power to do so.
I want Trump to just have to go to these places and go see the people he impacts.
He just fall asleep.
Yeah, that's true.
He falls asleep in his own cabinet meetings.
What am I saying?
Yeah.
All right. We talked about the crazy violence that's happening in Nigeria to both Christians and Muslims and these children that have been kidnapped. 24 girls were kidnapped from a few weeks ago from a school in Kebbi, a region in Nigeria. Those girls have been released, thank God. but between November 17th and November 23rd, over 300 students were kidnapped across northern Nigeria. Some of those have been freed, but the threat has become such that schools across the north are choosing or being forced to close. So the schools aren't even opening anymore. Yeesh. Which poses an entirely a big problem on its own.
Yeah.
Right? To date, over 180 schools have been shut down in that region. Protesting against the closures is Northern Women's NGO, Voices for Inclusion and Equity for Women, said the action reflected, quote, panic rather than protection, and, quote, would worsen an already dire educational situation for girls in a region with Nigeria's highest female illiteracy rates.
Yikes.
I don't know how to make this bearable, folks.
Yep, neither do I.
Yeah.
I talked about my time in Nigeria. It was beautiful. They're lovely people. It's just a shame what's happening over there. And again, it's driven by divides between North and South, and then the different religions, and then the different cultures, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and I really wanted to make sure that we came back to this because this is one of those stories, coming out of Africa that's not going to get a lot of play because Pete Hegseth is committing war crimes. So,
Sure.
That's the issue there.
Oh, maybe he'll commit a war crime over there.
Yeah.
Come on, Petey.
Wait, but we have one piece of this is kind of funny, though.
Yeah, this staying in Africa, but then bringing it full circle to how we started the show.
Yeah.
Remember you were talking about Nazis?
Yeah.
Oh, it was 1944.
Of course.
What have I told you? The Nazis are back.
What do you mean?
There's a man named Adolf Hitler, Unona, and I'm probably butchering his actual last name, but he was just reelected in his northern constituency.
This is a black man. This is not a white man.
Right. This is in Africa. This is in
let me just share.
Nambian. Yeah, here we go.
Let me share it for the YouTube watchers.
Yes.
This is not a white man.
No. And his full name, he's a Nambian politician, Adolf Hitler Unona. He won re-election in his northern constituency, according to media reports. He has long acknowledged the controversies around his name, and he is actively removing Hitler as the middle name from his official identity documents. But
now he is?
Yeah, after years of controversy, he's actually served as a counselor up there since 2004. So it's 20 years. It's just maybe in the modern age, he was like, yeah, I should probably get this fixed. But he's 59. His father gave him the name without understanding its historical significance whatsoever. As he was growing up, he said, as a child, I saw it as a totally normal name, he previously told media. But he is no longer wants to be known by his birth name and has formally removed Hitler from his ID. And he obviously, as a politician.
He's 59.
Yes. Yeah, he's been around for a long time.
So it's nearly 60 years.
60 years.
He thought this was chill.
Well, he just didn't know. He just didn't know.
No, I don't know.
Well, it's different over there. But he has made clear his name is not Adolf Hitler, it's Adolf Unona. And he's seen people calling him Adolf Hitler. And
well, bro, I hate to break it to you.
He doesn't even know. He's trying to shake it. But yes, he is 60, and he's been elected since 2004 for 20 years. So
I know he's removing Hitler, but Adolf, we all know. Your name is Adolf.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone else. I think they ruined that name.
Well, sure. It's been ruined. His father didn't know, though. And this is what I'm just saying, let's cut the guy some slack. Let's cut
You cut him some slack?
Don't you clip me on this, but let's cut Adolf Unona some slack.
Travis,
I made him point to not say the middle part. I don't want to get clipped over here.
Let's cut Adolf Hitler some slack. Is that what you were trying to say?
Yeah, I was going to say it, but then I was like, I don't want to say that. I'm from a Jewish suburb in Columbus, Ohio, and I don't need it. But it is fun because there's that guy in our comments who calls us Zionists all the time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's like, well, how about this? I'm very excited for this particular politician. More power to Mr. Unona.
Mr. Unona.
Councilman Unona.
All right, let's take a quick break and back to, oh my God. Well, I'm glad we fished out that segment with a little... We finished. That was like a nice.
We're doing more fishing than Pete Hegseth. I'll tell you that much.
Here we go. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with the JD Vance Corner. Welcome back to the Foreign Report. I'm Seena Gazavi, Travis Irvine. It's time for the JD Vance Corner.
Give him a chance. It's JD Vance. No, wait, he sucks.
Hell yeah! Oh yeah, that's the club remix.
Let's play the other one.
Give me the other one again.
chance. It's JD Vance. No, wait, he sucks.
Pew, 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 pew. And then I just do my own club remix. Yeah, it's everyone's favorite / least favorite segment of the week, everyone. JD Vance Corner. We have some JD updates, Seena.
Oh, God.
You ready?
No.
Post-Thanksgiving, JD, there was a clip of him. He went and visited some troops and basically said, you don't like the food here. That was a fun clip, but I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about how every week we, when we have a great guest on and we say, hey, what do you think of JD? And everyone, of course, knows that he sucks. But more importantly, like, hey, 2028, do you see this guy carrying on the MAGA movement? Does he have the juice? Does he have the riz? And there is one person out there who we've also talked about in the context of JD Vance before, a woman named Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, the late Charlie Kirk. And she does think Vance has the riz and the juice.
God, he is.
And by the juice, it could be multiple kinds of juices.
Yeah, he's gonna leave his family for her.
We've speculated, Michael Wolff. We've played all the clips.
Oh, God.
But Erica Kirk says that Turning Point, which she has inherited in the wake of Charlie's death, she is now in charge of Turning Point USA, which was the organization that Charlie Kirk built. She said that their support, and it's a powerful organization in terms of young people, other constituents on the conservative side, they are going to support JD Vance in 2028. Now, it is a little bit early still. JD Vance has not obviously announced anything. He's going to wait till after the midterms in 2026. But she told Megyn Kelly during a live show in Glendale, Arizona, that, quote, this was something that my husband was very direct about. It was, interestingly enough, one of the last few conversations we had was how intentional he was about supporting JD for 2028.
Wow.
And that is directly from Erica Kirk's mouth. Now, again, what does this mean for 2028? Will this actually help? Will Erica Kirk, like you just said, the speculation about Erica Kirk and JD Vance in and of itself, their sensual embrace at a Turning Point event down in Mississippi earlier this year. Will it actually work? Because there's another guy who I have not talked about, but we have.
I'm happy you brought this up.
We played him on this show, particularly when he was butting heads with Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
And in that case, we were like, oh, I'm rooting for Tucker in this interview.
Yeah.
Because a man named Senator Ted Cruz out of Texas, who was a rival of Trump in 2016, and then they've since then obviously been more allies.
Snap poll. Trump versus Cruz. Who do you pick?
2016? I mean, Trump won.
No, who do you pick, though?
Now?
In a vacuum.
Well, hold on. Sir, let me continue my segment real quick. Because you've just posed an impossible question to ask. Which one do I want P. Headset to bomb on a boat? Yeah, take them both out. Oh, there's 2 survivors and it's Trump and Ted Cruz?
Double tap
now! No survivors, no quarter.
Allegedly. This is satire.
Right, of course, allegedly. Anyway, Ted Cruz wants to run for president in 2028.
Yeah.
And he's doing these little behind-the-scene moves where he's publicly very for Trump, very for the administration. He was for, in that interview we played with Tucker Carlson, he was for the strikes on Iran.
Yeah.
Right? And then Tucker was like, how many people live in Iran? Do you even know?
22.
14? I don't know. So, this is, again... A lot of times my politics I describe to people as I hate it when the Democrats fight, but I love it when the Republicans fight.
Sure.
And this is one of those situations where Ted Cruz versus JD Vance in a potential 2028 primary, I would be rooting for Ted Cruz.
Wow.
Because I hate JD Vance so much. And right now, behind the scenes, according to a lot of anonymous sources talking to NBC News, Cruz is really stirring the pot.
I think I agree with you.
And that's the thing, right? It is all starting over like little things, like the nomination of the guy who's leading NASA. Like they nominated someone, then Elon Musk was beefing with the guy, so they pulled it back. Now they've renominated him. Ted Cruz is like behind the scenes. He sought unilateral subpoena power.
Wait,
as his role.
Who was Cruz backing in that?
There's a guy named Jared Isaacman, and this was a guy who. They nominated him, and then Elon Musk had problems with him because he was going to lead NASA, and NASA has contracts with SpaceX. So it's literally it's like nothing.
Oh, got it.
But now they've renominated Isaacman, and it's just little things like that because Cruz is in charge of the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee.
So he liked this guy.
He's got the authority to do these things. He wants to back Sean Duffy, who's leading the Department of Transportation.
Sean Duffy, go dress up to go flying.
And then he's doing that interview not wearing a tie. He's got all his buttons undone. I'm like, I don't want to fly sitting next to you, sir.
Yeah.
So anyway, Ted Cruz is just stirring the pot behind the scenes. And again, I say it's like little nothing arguments. These are just little small, just like, I don't know, just nitpicky stuff that they're doing behind the scenes. But apparently it's really pissing off the White House. According to one source, Cruz has gone out of his way to throw a wrench in the process, talking about the nominations, things like that, which has pissed off the White House, end quote. And they blame basically Cruz making secret moves about challenging not just J.D. Vance in 2028, but the Trump administration as a whole. If J.D. Vance is the inheritor of the MAGA movement, could Cruz be a spoiler in a Republican primary saying, hey, these policies have been bad? Cruz has been speaking out about the tariffs. You recall the clip of him calling out the FCC, saying, why...
That was bad.
Right. Like, why cancel Jimmy Kimmel over something he says? So it's just little things, right? These are little nitpicky things behind the scenes that Cruz is doing to potentially challenge a J.D. Vance. Where do you stand on a J.D. Vance Cruz primary?
So now I'm thinking it's like if it was Cruz v. Vance, I'd pick Cruz. But if it was Cruz v. Trump, I think I think it might pick Trump.
I know, because that's how unlikable Cruz is.
But not unlikable, but like organized evil.
Yeah.
This is the problem I have.
Yeah, whereas Trump's an idiot, Cruz is like a Harvard graduate who's calculating and knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and Trump will a couple times he'll do something that's like, okay, that's like benefiting some people, sure, and then it's like he's pissing off a certain amount of people. But Cruz is like an old neocon that was at the front of his class at law school, raising
supported
his hand
the
all the
Iran
time.
bombings more so than Tucker.
But Vance is fully backed by the PayPal mafia.
Yeah, the Peter Thiels.
And so he's going to just do whatever they say.
Yes.
But then Cruz is also a huge supporter of Israel.
Yes.
So that he could just escalate things very quickly in that part of the world
and
as well.
That's the riff in the conservative movement right now, right?
Yeah.
You got like Tucker Carlson just had Nick Fuentes on, and we've played the Nick Fuentes clip of he hates J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
So it's just all these intricate, like this guy hates this guy, but this guy will have him on the show. And then Cruz called out Tucker Carlson for having Nick Fuentes on his show.
One of the real Proud Boys of the Republican Party.
And then Trump was asked about it, and he was like, well, Tucker, we've had many conversations. And it's so funny to hear Trump be like, I can't tell Tucker who to have on his show. Meanwhile, he's trying to cancel Kimmel over anything. So it's very interesting in the MAGA movement right now. But I have one more article I want to talk about that I think disqualifies J.D. Vance entirely.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
J.D. Vance was asked in a softball question by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at a Make America Healthy summit. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said, there are 8 presidents from Ohio. How many can you name? Do you want to know how many?
RFK Jr. asked that?
RFK, here, I'll ask it. There are 8 presidents from Ohio. How many can you name, JD? This is a softball. JD Vance's response was telling. He said, quote, that is totally unfair question. And he only could name 2. Ulysses S. Grant, who was born in Cincinnati. And then Rutherford B. Hayes, which is arguably one of the most forgettable Ohio presidents. Now, Seena, you know me. I've been on LPN shows. I've been on LPN live shows. I can name all the presidents, all 47, backwards and forwards. To be fair, 2 of them, Grover Cleveland and Donald Trump, you only got to remember them once.
Right.
But they were in different places.
Can you tell me who are the 8?
I can tell you all 8, but I mean, I'm looking at pictures of them right now, but I could do it without looking at pictures.
I'm looking at pictures of them. I don't know who they are.
Yeah, this is what's so funny. I've had a long time bit that I call edutainment about the Ohio presidents. And would you like me to do it for you real quick? All right. 8 presidents from Ohio, but they all suck, right?
Okay.
Here are all the Ohio presidents. Is William G. Harding, the most corrupt president. William Howard Taft, the fattest president. William McKinley, assassinated. Benjamin Harrison. Benjamin Huison? Never heard of that guy.
McKinley sucks because he was assassinated?
Yeah, he's assassinated.
Okay, got it.
You gotta be. There are 4.
I'll go with you.
There's 4 U.S. presidents who have been assassinated. One was Kennedy. One was Lincoln. 2 were from Ohio. William McKinley was one of them. Benjamin Harrison. I'm going backwards here. Benjamin Harrison. Benjamin Harrison was the guy in between.
Showing off now. It's just going backwards.
That's what I'm saying. But J.D. Vance can't do this. I'm more presidential than J.D. Vance. And we have the same birthday. Benjamin Harrison, Benjamin Hewison. That's the joke.
Okay.
He was the guy who beat Grover Cleveland and then lost to Grover Cleveland.
Got it.
He's like the Joe Biden of 1890s.
Benjamin Harrison?
Benjamin Harrison.
There's not a chance in hell I would have remembered that guy.
Before him was James Garfield.
Got it.
Hated Mondays, loved lasagna, assassinated. You get the joke. Then Rutherford B. Hayes, Rutherford B. Who? We're doing it again.
Yep.
Ulysses Grant, who was the drunkest president. And before him was William Henry Harrison, who was president for 30 days.
Yeah, very short amount of
So
time.
my joke then is that if I want to become the ultimate Ohio president, I need to start drinking like a fish, gain 300 pounds, appoint a corrupt cabinet, and be assassinated after 30 days and be called Travisford B. Who gives a shit. Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody. Edutainment. That's
well, on
thing.
that note, that's amazing. Good job.
Thank you. I mean, it's just kind of mind-blowing, again, that, I was talking to our friend here at the network, Jake Young, and he's just like... If Travis Irvine had met Peter Thiel 20 years ago,
oh my God,
I would have been this J.D. Vance character and I would have named all the presidents, but I wouldn't switch. I wouldn't switch for anything in the world. I want to be right here next to you talking shit about J.D. Vance, and that's what we do here at the J.D. Vance Corner.
Well,
give him a chance. It's J.D. Vance. No, wait, he sucks.
Pew, 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 pew.
Let me just, that was from Kevin Flatt and SB. Thank you. And by the way, if you guys want to compete against Kevin Flatt and SB, we can have a contest.
I don't know. I kind of like that one, but man, if somebody, if we start getting multiple verses in there and it just turns into a whole musician movement, I'm totally down.
Yeah, I'll take a jam circle. Anyways, guys, thank you so much. This is let us know in the comments what you think. Travis will read them. I never read them. I don't respond. Sometimes. Anyways, folks.
You do publish them all, though.
I do publish them all. I'm not deleting comments on Spotify.
That's
if that's what you think. I publish them. I scowl at you when I do, but I publish them nonetheless. I'm Seena Ghaznavi. Check us out on all the socials. Sign up for the newsletter. For Travis Irvine, it's the Foreign Report. Peace.